In this video, we're going to talk about Python methods, starting with string methods. Methods in Python are functions which are organized by type and called using a special syntax. Specifically, you call methods by typing the name of an object and then a period, and then the name of a method which is associated with that object type, followed by a pair of parentheses containing any arguments that you want to pass to the method. We'll see exactly what this looks like in practice in just a second. The Python interpreter implicitly passes methods their object, the object that they're called with, as their first argument. You don't have to include this object in the parentheses. It's automatically passed to the method when you call it. Because you have to call a method using this syntax, a method call is an operator, meaning a symbol that triggers some operation, combined with at least one operand, which would be the function that the method is called with, even if you don't pass any arguments in between the parentheses of the method. In this notebook, I'm organizing methods as either investigative or transformative, and these are my own descriptive terms. They're not official technical terms, but I think it'll be helpful for you to understand and remember which methods belong to which types. Investigative methods aim to answer questions about their object, and transformative methods aim to modify their object. Depending on the object type, and specifically the type's mutability, transformative methods may produce a new version of their object, or they may modify their object in place, which means that the original object will change without a new assignment statement. We're going to talk about string methods first, which are named operations, they're functions, for which any string can serve as an operand. Other object types cannot. Because strings are immutable, transformative string methods will return a new version of their string without changing the original, which means if you want to replace a string that you've saved to a variable or stored in a container type, you'll need to write a new assignment statement to bind the result of your method call to that variable or to store the result of your method call inside that container. Let's start by looking at investigative string methods. These are methods that allow you to ask and answer questions about string objects. For example, you might want to know if a string begins with or ends with a certain character or a set of characters. In this case, we have a headline that says, Wells Fargo issues buy recommendation for Pfizer, and I'm assigning this string to the variable name headline. After that, I am writing the variable name, headline, followed by a period, followed by the name of the method that I want to call, starts with. After that, just like a function call, I have a pair of parentheses containing the one argument that I want to pass to this method, which is the string Wells Fargo. The starts with method is going to look at the headline object that it's called with and ask, does the headline string begin with the text Wells Fargo? So when I execute this cell, I see that the answer is true. This string does begin with Wells Fargo. In our second example, I'm creating a variable called city. I'm setting that equal to the string Charlotte, North Carolina, and I want to know if this city ends with FL, the abbreviation for Florida. Maybe I have a series of cities and I want to test whether or not they are cities in Florida. And so I'm using the ends with method. Like the headline example, I begin calling my method by writing the name of my variable, followed by a period, followed by the name of the method, ends with, followed by a pair of parentheses containing a single argument because that's what ends with expects. And this argument is the text that I want to look for inside my original string. So when I execute this, I see that it is false. Charlotte, North Carolina does not end with Florida. You can see in this example that methods work just like functions. And in fact, the Python developers could have implemented these methods as functions. The only difference would be that you would need to pass the method the string that you want to check as the first argument, and then follow that with Wells Fargo in this example as your second argument. Or you would pass the ends with function, if this were implemented as a function, Charlotte, North Carolina as its first argument, and then Florida as its second argument. So functionally, methods and functions are almost identical. You just call them with different syntax. Like the elements of a list, the characters in a string are indexed, subscribable, and sliceable. Here I have a string that says Pfizer's stock price is $29.01, and I'm assigning that to the name price string. Here I'm writing a subscription with price string that is going to return the 24th character of that string. And below that, I'm writing a slicing that will give me the beginning of the string up to the 6th character. When I execute this cell, the subscription is going to get me my $sign, and the slicing is going to get me the name Pfizer. So you can index and slice strings just like you can lists. You can use the index method to find the index of the first instance of a character or a series of characters in a string. For example, if I want to know where the $sign appears in this price string, I can write the name of my object, followed by a period, followed by the name of my method, index, and then I'm going to pass that the character that I want to find. When I execute this, Python tells me that the $sign is the 24th character in this string, and we know that's true because we just wrote this subscription. The index method can also be used to find a series of characters, in this case the word stock, and Python tells me that this appears at the 9th character. So this S is the 9th character in this whole string. Here I'm calling the index method and I'm passing it a period as its argument. And what's notable about that is this string contains 2 periods. One is the 27th character. That's the decimal between my dollars and cents, and the other is the period at the end of the sentence. The index method will only tell me the index of the first instance of the character that I pass as its argument. If I wanted to know the number of periods in my string, I can use the count method. I use the same syntax. I begin with the name of my variable, followed by a period, followed by the name of the method I want to call, count. I pass that the period character, and it tells me that there are 2 instances of periods in that string. Now we're going to put this together in a simple application. Here we have a string that says Wells Fargo projects that Pfizer's stock price will rise to $29.01 by the year's end. And then we have a similar string that says JP Morgan projects that Johnson & Johnson's stock price will rise to $165.86 by the year's end. Our goal is to assign the price in each string, so $29.01 and $165.86, to the corresponding variable, PFE price and J&J price. To force us to use these methods that we just looked at, we're adding a constraint, which is that the second line of our code has to be identical to the first, except for swapping the variable name PFE string with J&J string. And that means we're not going to be able to count the number of characters before 2901 and then slice this and count the number of characters before 165.86 and slice this. We're going to have to find a way to dynamically identify the beginning index and end index of the slices that we want to make. So the way that we're going to do that is we know that we're going to slice these strings. So I'm going to write the name of PFE string and type an open square bracket. That's the beginning of my slicing. I know that my price begins with a $sign, so I can use the index method to identify the index of the beginning of my price. In order to call my method, I need to write the name of my variable again, PFE string, followed by the name of the method that I want to call, index, and then I'm going to pass index the character that I want it to find. This method call is going to give me the index of the $sign character. And so I can use this as my starting index in my slicing. I'm going to follow that starting index with a colon to separate it from my end index. And remember, in a slicing, the ending index is excluded. So somehow I want to dynamically find the index of this space that follows the last character in my price. I can't identify this space relative to the $sign because my Pfizer price has 2 digits before the decimal, but my Johnson & Johnson price has 3 digits before the decimal. I can get around that by finding the index of my decimal and then adding 1, 2, 3 to that index. That's going to give me the space after each of these prices, even though the prices have a different number of characters. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to call the index method again, beginning with the name of my variable, PFE string, and then the name of my, a dot, and then the name of my method, index. I'm going to give it the character that I want to look for, which is the period. And this is my method call. It's going to give me the index of this period and then this period. But that's not the index that I want to use as my ending index in my slicing. Instead, I want to add 3 to my index to get the index of the space after the period. Now, if I comment out J&J price for now, I can execute this cell and see that it does give me $29.01, the price of Pfizer. Instead of having to write a completely new line of code, all I need to do is replace PFE string with J and J string. And now I can execute the cell and get both of my prices with two lines of code that are almost identical. So this is an example of using the index method to dynamically identify indices that I pass to a slicing so that I can extract these prices more efficiently than counting all the characters before each instance.